Si hablas inglés y llevas tiempo siguiéndome o siguiendo un estilo de vida ancestral, es muy probable que conozcas a la Weston A. Foundation. Incluso ellos tienen su propia edición en español y tienen su propio podcast en español que se llama Tradiciones Sabias, aparte de lo que tienen en inglés. De hecho, yo misma he estado en ese podcast y me han entrevistado la maravillosa Hilda, Holistic Hilda, si la conoces así. Hoy a quien vamos a entrevistar es a Sally Fallon. Sally es la creadora y fundadora de la Weston A. Foundation. Y el motivo de entrevistarla hoy, que es todo un honor para mí después de tantos años siguiéndola y siguiendo a su fundación y siguiendo a su podcast y siguiendo los principios que enseñan y siendo una fiel fan de su libro Nourishing Traditions, que nos enseña todo acerca de la nutrición que seguían nuestros ancestros. Hoy tenemos a Sally aquí porque ese libro finalmente, después de muchísimos años de haber sido publicado, ha salido por fin en español. No es solamente un libro de cocina, no es solamente un libro de recetas, es todo un tratado de nutrición ancestral y vas a aprender muchísimo leyéndolo. Es un libro que no se tiene solo en la cocina, sino que se tiene al lado de la mesilla en la noche para poder leerlo y aprender. Estoy muy feliz de que haya salido por fin este libro con el título Tradiciones Culinarias y hoy te vamos a estar contando todo junto con Sally acerca del libro, de lo que llevó a crearlo, de lo que significa y de cómo sacarle todo el provecho. En su historia La reunión de la tribu, el autor Charles Eisenstein adelantaba que, en el momento de mayor crisis humana, la tribu se encontraría unos a otros para comenzar la historia del nuevo mundo. El metaverso, el Matrix, nunca ha vivido una crisis siquiera comparable a la que estamos viviendo. Es el momento del derrumbe total y el comienzo del nuevo mundo. Por lo menos, es nuestra responsabilidad comenzarlo. Como el arcano de la torre en tarot, la destrucción no es fácil, pero es necesaria para el nuevo comienzo. ¿Cómo transitar por esta hecatombe juntos, con humildad y compasión, para que esta crisis no sea el fin, sino el principio? Eso es de lo que se trata este podcast. Bienvenida a Viaje a la Nueva Historia, la reunión de la tribu. Te estábamos esperando. So like we say, my dear following, here we have Sally today. Obviously, you all know who Sally is. You all know who Hilda is. You all know who the Weston A. Foundation is because I've talked about them time after time during all these years together. I've shared the recipes with you. I've shared the way they make us prepare grains with you. I actually have a course, Sally, on sourdough bread, and in this case, gluten-free, following your principles, but also making it gluten-free for those who prefer to go the route of gluten-free. And so I am very, very happy to have Sally here today to talk to us about the amazing fact that finally, Nourishing Traditions, the Bible, is finally in Spanish. I'm so happy, Sally. Thank you so much for doing this. And
don't thank me. Thank Anna and the publishing house because it's a huge job. Very big book.
It is a huge job because it's a huge book as well. And for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of having this book in your hands, it's not just a recipe book the old-fashioned way. You don't find recipes, which is full of the first time I had this book in my hands, I think I was for 2 weeks reading it. I was reading a cooking book, which is something that you wouldn't expect of a cooking book, right? You don't sit down to read a cooking book. You check the recipes on. But this is beyond that. This is a book. I would say this is first a book about education on nourishing traditions, and then it's a recipe book following those nourishing traditions. Right? And right. I want to know, Sally, from you, because this is my ideas, but from you, what made you write this book, Sally? Because it's a mammoth of a book, and I cannot imagine the work it
Well,
took.
it was insanity.
Yes.
I got this idea. It was a friend of mine who suggested we write a book together, and I said, "Don't be ridiculous. There's so many cookbooks out there," and I said, "Plus, you and I cook differently and have different ideas, and I still want to be friends with you." So I said, "Forget it," But it was an idea. It was like it grabbed hold of me. I couldn't get it out of my head, and I'd never written a book. I didn't know what I was doing, but I started, and there were lots of hurdles to overcome. But so I almost abandoned it. I thought, this is too much work. I wasn't getting a lot of support,
I
you
can
might
imagine.
say. So, but one day I was just sitting there. In the old days, I played the piano when I had time, and I was just sitting on the piano stool and kind of in a reverie. And I actually heard a voice that said, "It is very important for you to write the cookbook." And it was audible. It wasn't like in my head or anything. It was a voice. So based on that, I continued, and I had a lot of help on the way, mainly from Mary Enig, whom I met, and I asked her to help me with things. So I just carried on, and it took 6 years to write, lots of experiments in the kitchen.
Yes, of
And if
course.
people who talk to my kids, they can tell you very funny stories about all the things that didn't work and the experiments I did with them. So the counters with bubbling ferments and so forth. But
Exploding ferments.
anyway, it came out, and I actually have a box of file of rejection letters from the major publishers. All of them said, "Well, this is very interesting, but it would never sell, and
Oh
it's
my God.
not the mainstream." So then it was amazing. This angel appeared. No, it was a friend, and he said, "I thought, well, I'll publish it myself. But I had no money to print it." And he said, "Oh, I'll loan you the money." And he found a publisher who does, you pay. It's called a vanity press. You pay, and so we went ahead, and it came out, and it sold about 5 books in the first month. But the thing is, it resonated with people, and they started talking about it, and word of mouth. And this is before the internet and all this stuff, so it just started to sell, and each month it sold more. And I had them in my garage. I was sending them to Amazon myself. So I used to swim. This is when I had more time. I used to go to the swimming club, and I was getting dressed, and the woman next to me, we had a conversation, and her husband owned a distribution company. I mean, the whole book was like this, coincidences and
Serendipities and serendipities.
serendipity. Of course, nothing happens by chance. And that publishing company, that distribution company picked it up. They got it into bookstores, on Amazon. I didn't have to have it in my garage anymore. And anyway, so it just, one thing led to another, and pretty soon I was selling about 6,000 books a month, and it was just like a phenomenon. So I'm just hoping that happens in the Spanish book.
6,000 books a month.
Yeah. Yes. And even today, it's 1 or 2,000 a month. So
Sally, yeah.
it was so different from anything else, that I think it just captured people's interest.
Yeah. Yes, because like I said, I think it's firstly a book on educating us on the proper ways of cooking food and the proper foods.
Yes.
And not foodstuffs.
And we were going into this low fat, low salt, high fiber. It's a diet that will kill you, basically.
Yes.
And create infertility. And that, I knew that myself, but how to get this message out to people?
This is very interesting, Sally, because back in many years ago, I had Not very happy about it now, but then it happened. I dipped my toe into bodybuilding, and I think it was precisely the type of diet what got me out of it, which was fat-free and salt-free, because obviously salt makes you retain liquids, so you're not as defined. And obviously fat has more calories than anything else. So, it's just ridiculous, Sally. This is before I knew any better.
Yeah.
And when I came out of it, when I said, okay, I need to stop, it was obviously because my period was missing.
Yes, that will happen, yes.
Exactly. And the way to recover my period was to start eating real food, lots of fat, ridiculous amounts of fat, because my body asked for it. I didn't do it on purpose. It was my body asking for it.
Yes.
And so, yes, absolutely. It will kill you, a fat-free, salt-free.
And it will make you infertile and make the men infertile. So it was a genocidal diet.
Yeah.
And it was becoming very shrill. I mean, in 1990, they started telling the pediatricians, at the age of 2, you tell the moms to put them on this diet. And, it's horrible.
Fat-free diet for babies.
Well, low fat. So
low fat.
they're supposed to have breast milk, and then they're allowed to have whole milk until they're 2. And then they have to be on low fat milk, very few eggs, no bacon, no butter. Use the healthy spreads.
Oh my.
And lots of fiber, kale and stuff, and low salt. And this is a diet that will make children very, very sick.
Mm-hmm. And is this true today? Or back in the 90s? Was this back in the 90s? Is it still true?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Maybe they're not pushing it as hard because the American Academy of Pediatrics has backed off a little bit.
Because now they are recommending veganism, maybe?
Well, plant-based, they say. But in the meantime, I was raising my own children. And the qualification that I have is that I like to cook. And I like to cook French food. And so I was raising my children on a high-fat diet. And they were so healthy. They were healthier than I had been. And I could just see that this was the way to do it. And I could see their friends and the problems the friends were having with their health. So.
And Sally, where did you get all the information to write this book? Like, because it's like information that we've lost, right? Like if we ask our abuelitas, maybe they will know a lot of this, but also you have so many books, from extracts from books in the book.
Yeah, well,
it's such a research.
Called Dr. Price. Dr. Price's book was the first resource. And I'm a reader. I had just done lots of reading. You may notice there were lots of extracts from novels and things like this. So I just kind of kept them. And then with Mary, she helped me find the stuff too. The other person who helped me really a lot was a man named Jacques de Langre, who had the Celtic Sea Salt Company. And I got to talking to him, and he put me on to the fermentation. He said, if you're doing this on ancestral diets, you need to talk about fermentation and sourdough bread. I hadn't even thought of this. And he told me about 2 books that were in French. And you may notice that there are a lot of translations that I put in the sidebars. And that got me started on the fermenting foods and the grains and everything. So he was a very big help to the book.
Like everything else with this book, no? All the serendipities and all the people came to help.
Oh, it was a book that had to be written. That, everything came together. All the information I needed came together. All the help I needed came together. But when you have, it's a calling. You have to do it.
Yeah.
You can't say no.
Yeah. There's not saying no. Yeah. And everyone knows in this community, we talk about this a lot because our 5 pillars of ancestral health, which is something, I mean, I put together, I wouldn't say I created because I didn't invent anything new.
Yeah.
I just put together the 5 things that I think bring us to an ancestral life as much as we can in the 21st century. And one of them explores the spirituality and our connection with everything.
Yes.
Even the things that are not alive. Everything is connected.
Yes. Everything is connected, and there's a plan.
And there is a plan
for everyone
and for everything.
Also a solution. I mean, we're definitely in the 11th hour as far as food is concerned.
Yes.
And our food supply is becoming more and more poisoned.
Yes.
But as Tom Cowan often says, the solutions are easy. All we need is the knowledge, and then we can get the solutions.
And I like that when you say that, because the solutions are easy. All that we need is the knowledge. And that will go together with the fact that what we all notice online nowadays is that they're trying to confuse information so much that at the end you don't know what's information and what is not.
Yes, exactly.
And then nobody knows what to do because they don't have the information.
You're
right?
just paralyzed. Yes.
It's paralyzed, exactly.
Yeah.
It's what I call the paralysis for analysis.
Yes,
They analyze everything so much because there is so much of everything and there is so much conflicting information. Usually the solution is the simplest one, or is the one that the abuelitas used to do and used to say, right?
Well, we like to say the scientific validation of traditional foodways. Mm-hmm. And the really perfect one that I like to give is they space their children 3 years apart. And there actually is a scientific study, showing that the ideal spacing for children to prevent birth defects is 3 years.
It's 3 years.
So,
which coincidentally is usually the time that a baby breastfeeds more intensely, the first 2 to 3 years, right?
Yeah, or if you breastfeed that long, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, not all cultures breastfeed for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have written about this. Usually they're giving some food by 6 months.
Yeah, of course, but you continue.
One culture starts at 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
I found about one culture. So there's a big variation. But also that 3 years apparently is the best spacing for the emotional health of the child. Because the child is becoming more independent and doesn't want mother hovering and, helicopter mom. So she's got something else to take care of.
That's true. This is something that my partner Mark talks about with his patients. He specializes in women particularly, and he is very clear about this. He says 2 to 3 years between babies, because from 2 years is when babies start to realize their individuality.
Yes.
Until 2 years old, they more or less believe they are one with the mother.
Right. So the mother doesn't want to have another baby, while the first baby needs that connection with mom.
Exactly. It's amazing to hear this from you, Sally. I love it so much. And Sally, how did you come across the work of Weston A. Price, and why did it catch your interest so much, and how did it come to become the Weston A. Price Foundation? What was that story?
So let's see. My first child was born in 1973, and then I actually stumbled on his book in 1974, and it was an eye-opener. And so I just continued, as I already was doing, with a pretty high-fat diet and lots of cream and butter, and so I snuck the liver in occasionally. And then each of my children was healthier than the last because I was doing things better. Then I started to write the book. That was 1990. Isn't that interesting? It was the year that they decreed that these low-fat diets had to be for children. That I got this idea to write this book. And there is a very big emphasis on children in the book. When the book came out, Mary Enig and I felt that we needed something more. We needed an organization that kept people abreast and got people involved, that did activism and so forth. So in 99, we set up the Weston A. Price Foundation.
Mm-hmm. Because
and
of
that,
all, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that, that was an obscure foundation, just an office in my house, and tried to get this journal out, etc. But it has grown, and it's very well respected now, except by the absolute establishment. But
which I love.
yeah.
I would say anything that the establishment doesn't like, I'm interested in.
Well, somebody sent me a website. I didn't know about this or it was an article by a woman who called herself Skeptic Doc or something. And she said about our website, "This is the worst website I have ever read. It's got dangerous misinformation."
Oh.
On and on. So.
Well, then is when you know that you're doing something right.
Yes, right.
Exactly. When you start having the people, the naysayers.
Yes.
That's it. That's very important. And one of the things that I always so this we're gonna go into more the theme of children, because also you have a book on cooking for children, right?
Well, it's baby and childcare.
Baby and childcare, which also covers prenatal.
Exactly.
For the mother and the baby. Mm-hmm.
And childhood illnesses, big chapter on vaccinations and why you shouldn't do it.
Exactly. Mark and I have sent this book to many of our friends who are having babies. We always have two books that we give to everyone who gets pregnant, which is the children one from you, and the Continuum Concept by Jen Lidloff is her name.
Oh, uh-huh.
And those two books is like what we give to everyone who gets pregnant, because
it's lovely.
It's prime information. And so knowing more about children in the US, for example, is very common, which is not here in Europe, and it's something that a lot of Europeans are now getting interested in, which I'm very happy about, which is homeschooling.
It's funny you should bring that up, because we don't have a position on homeschooling. I'm a product of public schools, and I actually believe in public schools. I believe that children should go to school. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand sometimes the schools are so bad, or you have the problem with the vaccinations, that you have no choice to homeschool. But, I'm a kind of a student of Rudolf Steiner, and he talked about the importance of children having people they can admire and look up to who are not their parents. Mm-hmm. So I'm a believer in children going to school outside.
But my question that was going through with this was, one of the things that a lot of people, wherever they can do homeschooling, is to teach their children proper education about food and how to prepare properly food, right?
Yes, and you can do that. And it's been very interesting to see my own children. Mm-hmm. They, oh, Mom, and they were a little scornful. Of course, then this book took off, and they kind of had to eat their words a little bit. But
no pun intended.
Yeah, right. One of my boys became a chef. My daughter cooks. My son is the cook in his family. He cooks, not his wife. And the third child also, they all cook. They all know how to cook, and they understand the concepts.
So how do you get children initiated into food preparing, food loving, so they actually, because I always say to my followers, it is impossible to eat healthily if you don't cook at home.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely.
You have to give this gift to your children since they're little, because if they don't learn it, it is impossible to eat healthy if you are not eating at home and cooking.
Well, the problem in Europe, a lot of the kitchens are so small. They're like closets.
I know.
But the American kitchen is bright and large, and usually there's a counter, and the kids sit there and do their homework while Mom cooks. That's a lovely thing, and they see this. And the first thing I taught all my kids to make was salad dressing. Huh. So while Mom's cutting up the salad, they make the dressing. But they see this day after day, that Mom is in the kitchen cooking, and they're there, learning spelling words or whatever it is.
So it would be a good idea, like, to have a kitchen where they always say the kitchen is the center of the home, right? Well, I think people have made it the front room with the TV, but it should be the kitchen.
Yes. Well, now kitchens are built they're sort of the main room of the house. We had a subdivision built behind us, and the kitchen is the largest room.
Yeah.
It's like there's the TV and the couches and the kitchen and the table and everything. So I think it's a little bit easier here. When we lived in France, there was no way you could have kids in the kitchen and
No.
also cook. It was too
No,
small.
it is true. It is true that kitchens here in Europe are small and usually they're separated from the living
Yes,
area.
and down a hall,
See,
they're away from everything.
exactly. Here we have an advantage. It is in the living area. It's just separated by a door, but at least it's in the living area. But you wouldn't be able to have people in that kitchen. Usually when I'm cooking, I'm like, everyone get out of this kitchen right now
Yeah.
because I don't have space.
So that is, at least if you could have one child in there,
At least one.
rotate the children.
Rotate the
but-
children. Okay.
yes, but they need to see you cooking
Yeah.
and see that this is something that's just normal, that you do this every day.
And I guess I see this a lot with YouTubers who are like who have like big farms and things like that. They always cook with their children attached to them since they're babies. So,
I didn't quite do that, but what I did have was it's like a seat. We call it baby seat, and it sat on the counter. And so when they were little, I could talk to them while I was cooking.
this is
That's a
fantastic.
lot of fun to have your
This
child on the
reminds
counter.
me a lot. I don't know if you know. It's a Mexican novel that was. It even has a film from the 80s, I think, which is called. I think in English they translated as like Water for Chocolate
Yeah, I didn't see that, but yes, right.
by Laura Esquivel, which is a Mexican, and the novel is probably one of my favorite books of all times. And everything happens. Oh, Sally, you have to read this book. It's in English
Oh, I
as well.
will, I will,
I think
yeah.
you will enjoy it so much because everything happens in Mexico, and I know you have a quite a relationship with South America, at least with our traditions in the kitchen. And everything in that book happens in the kitchen. And it's a novel, it's a story, and it's a very beautiful story with a lot of sensuality, a lot of experiences, and everything goes through the kitchen and through the food.
Well, I'm glad you say this, because one of my concerns about the diet that's being promoted today and the loss of sitting at the table that people used to do. You sat at the table and what you ate was delicious.
Sí.
And it satisfied you. It had enough fat. It was filling, and you never thought about eating between meals. And still in Europe, it's very vulgar to walk down the street with eating something. But nobody thinks there's anything wrong with that in America. And if you sit down to the dietary guidelines type of meal with low fat, no salt, high fiber, lots of kale and horrible stuff like that, you're going to be hungry an hour later. The meal is not satisfying. It doesn't leave you feeling good. You haven't enjoyed this meal. And it has taken the guidelines just take all the joy out of eating. And let's face it, eating is one of the great joys of life, and you get to do it 2 or 3 times a day.
Wow.
And it doesn't have as many problems as sex or whatever. So eating should be joyful. It should be delicious. You should be looking forward to sitting down at the table.
And people are so scared of food nowadays, Sally.
Yes, I know.
So scared. And when you eat this way, like people are so used to like watch what they eat. When you eat this way, you don't watch what you eat. You eat the food.
Right. And you get full.
You get full.
You don't overeat. You get full, and then you don't think about eating for many hours.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, here in Europe, whenever I go to the US, and I lived in London for 15 years. So London is very similar in that you will see people eating in the streets or walking with food. And this kills me, especially because I don't know how they do it. I get a stomach pain from walking and eating.
Well, I mean, I hate to say this, I find it vulgar.
Yes. Yes.
It's not cool.
Yeah, exactly. But in the rest of Europe, like here in Germany, for example, I mean, if you go to Berlin, of course you do so. But I'm not in Berlin. I'm in a little town south of Germany, very close to Italy. Here you don't see people eating in the streets. You don't.
No.
Not even drinking coffees,
No,
walking.
you wouldn't do it.
No.
Oh, the coffee cup. People walking with the coffee.
No. No. People sit down to drink a coffee. People sit down to eat a meal, even if it's just a snack. But you don't see people walking with like stuff in their faces.
Yeah.
And this is losing the culture around food, Sally. Do you think it? I don't know. It has more effects. Like let me rephrase this. When we start seeing food as just fuel to keep going, as just calories, like so many people say it's just calories in, calories out. When we see food just as fuel, just as calories that we can consume standing, walking,
Yes, right.
or opening a packet and stuffing our faces with whatever's inside the packet, that doesn't only affect our body and our health. It translates to many other things in life, right?
Yes, I think so. And I call this diet that they want us to eat, low fat, low salt, high fiber, the puritanical diet, like the Puritans, okay? That you're going to be abstemious and pure and good, And unfortunately, this diet is so lacking in what we actually need to be healthy and what we need to enjoy our food, that it throws us right in the arms of what I call the pornographic foods, which is all the junk food. And there's nothing in the middle, which is, good, wholesome, satisfying food with butter and sauces and, vegetables and meat and, all the good things are, it's either one extreme or the other. And we need to get back to the middle.
In fact, there is such a thing as the hashtag online called food porn.
Food porn. That's what it is. It's
exactly.
Food porn.
So you go from like either not eating at all and just drinking water all day and drinking black coffee and fasting all day, every day, all the time, which I don't abide by fasting. I think people are just making
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Especially is targeting women, like always.
Yes.
I am anti-diet.
Medieval about this idea that your body is impure, it has all these toxins, and you have to punish yourself to get these devils out of your body. Exactly. And I just don't abide by that mindset. It's not healthy.
There's nothing more beautiful and purifying than treating your body with the right nutrients.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And like I say, especially because I talk mostly to women and 95% of people following me are women, we're usually the main targets of any fad diet that comes. So in the 90s it was the low fat or no fat. Then I don't know what it is even.
Starting in 1911, that's when Crisco came out.
Exactly.
Which is the shortening.
Yeah.
And there was a book written about the story of Crisco, and it definitely targeted women. Mm-hmm. And it pushed all the buttons. It said, if you eat Crisco instead of lard, your houses will be cleaner, they'll smell better, you'll be more modern, it's easier to digest, and your children will grow up with better characters. So all the concerns of the upcoming American housewife, she wanted to have a clean house, she wanted to be modern, she wanted her children to be good, and they knew how to punch all those buttons. And that's how they stopped us from eating lard, which is a very healthy fat, probably the best source of vitamin D in our diet. Wonderful fat profile that gives you beautiful skin and helps you with digestion. And all these things were abandoned to eat this poison, which is Crisco.
Mm-hmm. Or any of the vegetable oils. We don't have Crisco here in Europe. For those of you who do not know, Crisco is they call shortening, which I don't know in
Yes.
Spanish if we have anything similar, but it will be kind of a vegetable lard. So instead of
Yes.
being
Yes.
liquid, oil is a block of,
Yeah.
it looks
It's
like
like
lard.
margarine, but it's not
Margarine,
gold
exactly.
yellow.
Yeah,
It's the same
exactly.
thing as
It's the
margarine.
same thing, exactly. It's
Yeah.
just a block of vegetable oils, and well, everybody knows in this platform what vegetable oils are and why we don't want them.
Yeah.
So everything is always targeted to women, and then women, like we said before, become really scared of eating food and eating fat and eating eggs and eating meat and eating
Yeah.
organs and eating anything that they think. I don't know. Now
High
I think
cholesterol. High
exactly
cholesterol. And
cholesterol.
then they impose this on their husbands, thinking they're doing the right thing. And then the husbands are cranky or
But of course,
violent, or
yes.
they get cancer, or something happens.
Like you said about the Puritan diet, I couldn't not agree more, because when you eat a diet like they recommend, your hormone levels become so low that you have no
Yes,
interest in sex. So yes,
exactly. And that's why they said your children will have better characters, while
oh,
your boys won't be interested in girls anymore.
oh Lord Jesus.
And that's absolutely, I mean, if that's how you interpret that.
Oh, come on.
One of the things I've found, and this is actually kind of a complaint, it was actually an Italian man. He wrote to me, and they're raising their little boy this way, and he said he is so independent and so naughty and so headstrong. And I said, well, yes, they will be like that.
They will
So,
be. We
and my
have,
children were like that too, but
yes,
they are high functioning
yes,
adults and
yeah,
good parents.
yes.
And I always say, let them be, bad when they're young. It's normal.
And it's part of their play, is
Yes.
pretend play, is how they explore their their own reality, they explore their bodies, they explore what it is to be a kid,
Yes,
and it is all
exactly.
pretend play. We have many friends. We have a very good community here in Germany of people who think alike, and friends of us who have kids who follow this lifestyle,
Yeah.
unvaccinated, and it's sometimes it's incredible because we have a very good friends, and they have 3 boys, and they are between the ages of 8 and 2, and they are a handful in a way,
Yes. Yes.
because they're full of energy. they
Yes.
are they're they are great kids, and they're so lovely and so caring and everything that is good in a child, but at the
Yes.
same time they have levels of energy and they're a
Yeah.
handful.
Yeah. More
But it's
more than the parents. Yeah.
exactly. But it's great to see this, because that's how they are, and that's how children have to be. Children should not be sitting in a chair
Well, they should be able to
looking.
concentrate
Yeah,
when it's appropriate, but at the
exactly.
same time, they should be just full of energy. So,
But having a
they
good
can
character doesn't mean that a child has to be sitting on a chair all day
exactly.
and
Yes.
not saying or doing anything,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Because nowadays it seems like that's
Not getting
regarded.
dirty. Yeah.
Exactly, and nowadays being a normal child is regarded as having attention deficit disorder.
Or just being too naughty and too wild, and my boys were considered too wild, but they were good kids.
I
They
was
weren't.
quite wild, Sally.
Yeah, I guess I was too. Yeah.
I was a very wild kid. I think I had a good racing, definitely.
Upbringing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely eating a good, but yeah, I was a handful as a child. Sally, and it's like we've been talking, we have a few minutes more, but I would like to know what is at stake if we don't continue sharing this way of eating, and we don't teach people and kids, children, how to eat properly, how to find proper foods, and what is considered proper food. Because this is another thing I get, Sally, nowadays, is when people write to me and they say, I eat healthily, I don't know why I am like this and that. And I say, what do you define healthily? And then they give you the guidelines that are mainstream. Well, I eat a lot of veggies and salads, and
Yeah.
I drink a
Yeah.
lot of water, I don't drink a lot of salt. Exactly. I drink 2 liters of water a day. I'm like, why
Oh,
do you drink
no.
2 liters of water a day? Like, what for?
You're drowning, yeah.
Exactly. You're
So,
drowning. So, exactly. What's at stake? And
well, what's at stake is the future of mankind. And
good.
I would say whether or not you're going to have grandchildren.
Exactly.
That's what Mary Ennig used to say. There's going to be so many people who won't have grandchildren. And that's the number one reason we're here, is to propagate the human race and make the earth a beautiful place. And so this is what's at stake. I say we're in the 11th hour because we're now in our third generation of processed foods. And we know in animal studies that this leads to infertility, complete infertility, one way or another. Either the animals lose interest in the opposite sex, or they can't breed, or whatever.
Which
So
we are seeing.
what we're seeing, I call it the natural selection of the wise. If you read the book of Revelations, it talks about the great tumult happening and a remnant left. But this remnant will be wise and understanding of how to take care of the earth and our bodies. And our bodies are temples. And, you wouldn't go into a church and smash everything up with a hammer, but that's what eating processed food is like in your body. So I think I'm very optimistic for the future. I think
This is
that we're
good.
going to see a big decline in the population, but then once we have gained this wisdom, just an explosion of good health and happy children. And it doesn't take long to replenish the earth.
It doesn't.
And to take care of our land, we're big advocates of grass-based
Yes.
agriculture. We're just poisoning the earth with Roundup and all these pesticides. It's worse in the United States than it is in Europe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Germany is a big, especially the south of Germany, is a big agricultural country. In fact, we are surrounded by farms here where we are, and we're very close to Italy as well, which is also the case. And thankfully, in countries like this in Europe, here it's very easy still nowadays to just buy food from your farmer. So you just go, we buy all our food from our local farm, and precisely because you mentioned, which I love, Rudolf Steiner,
Yes.
before, people here are, they're
He was a
Germans.
big influence in Germany, much bigger than the States.
Exactly.
Although I think one of the most important things that's happened in this century is that his books have been translated into English,
Yes,
because we didn't have access
I know.
before.
And they are being translated into Spanish as well, which is
Yes.
something I've talked
Yeah.
about in the podcast before. We went recently, a couple of months ago, to visit the center house he built in Switzerland.
Oh, yes,
Which
yes.
is very, at the beginning he wanted to build it in Munich, but then the war was happening, and the risk was big that it was going to be bombed, so he ended up building it in Switzerland,
Yes.
which is is an amazing place.
Yeah, okay.
And the fact that you mentioned him is very important, because here in Germany he has a big influence, and a lot of the farmers around us follow Demeter standards, and you can just go and buy amazing food from them, from animals that are free to roam. They
Yes.
practice grass-fed.
Well,
ourselves have chickens here in the backyard, and
Good.
it's amazing because we have 8 chickens, and we eat. We sometimes have shortage of eggs, and we are only 2 people.
So one of the things the Weston A. Price Foundation has done through our local chapters is encourage people to buy directly from farms.
Yes.
And
Raw
that
milk.
has exploded. We have a lot more small farms than we used to have,
Okay.
a lot more farmers doing non-toxic agriculture. So that's a really positive thing that's happened here.
Yes, which is amazing, because also the US has so much agricultural land, and I have a lot of friends with farms in the US.
Well, the problem with agriculture in America is that the Department of Agriculture never met a chemical they didn't like. And
They love them.
very scornful of what we do. I mean, my husband and I have a farm also, so they're very scornful. They actually tried to shut us down with
I
regulations.
know. I know.
I was kind of in their face, but
Good.
and they leave us alone now. But they truly believe that if we had small farms, everyone would starve.
Which is quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite. If everyone
Well,
would be able to
yeah.
have even a little farm, it doesn't need to be a farm.
No, but
Um,
even an acre is lovely for people to
exactly.
have. Yeah.
Even if you like, we have a backyard, we have a big garden, but it's a garden after all. It's not a farm. But we are able to cultivate so much of our own food during the summer months, and then
Yes.
in the winter with the chickens, which is amazing eggs all year round. And Sally, I think you will like this. Our chickens eat like we eat. We feed them
Yes.
animals and we feed them
Yeah,
fat.
chickens are omnivores. They're not vegetarians. Now, the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, has declared that the chicken is a vegetarian.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah,
but
tell that to the chickens when I bring them all the bones from the bone broth and all the meat from the bone broth. Tell them they're vegetarians.
yes, exactly.
Exactly.
So
And
this is changing, and I think it's all very positive. The demand for raw milk in this country has skyrocketed, just skyrocketed. That's something that happened in COVID.
see,
There's not enough raw milk right now. So, and our system makes it easy to step up and meet this demand. But this is all very, very positive.
Sally, I just love that your message is a message of positivity, of hope. I happen to agree with you because many people think that we're doomed. I don't think we're doomed at all.
We're not doomed.
No,
No.
we're not doomed. I think there is a lot coming up, a lot going on, but I think we are here at this moment in time because we need to be here. And I actually think we have a bright future in front of us if we continue this.
I say we're the furry little mammals while the big dinosaurs are going extinct. We'll survive.
We'll survive. We are humans after all, and we've been surviving for quite a long time.
And we're all of us are on a path.
Yes.
And the path to gaining wisdom. I think this is one of the beautiful things that Steiner has done is emphasize this. We're all evolving spiritually, and part of that evolution is learning how to eat. And in the past, in traditional societies, you didn't have to think about what you ate. You just ate what was there. But now we have to think about every morsel that goes in the mouth and make a decision and exercise our will forces and exercise discernment. So now eating is actually an exercise in spiritual evolution.
And it's an exercise on our rights as human beings, right?
Yes.
It's almost a political act to eat right.
Yes, eating is a political act.
Eating is a political act. Thank you so much, Sally. Just to finish with this, unless you want to add anything else, it's what I always ask my guests, which is, if someone has to start today, and this is something that Hilda always does as well.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
if someone has to start today, what will be the first step to start eating better?
Eat butter. Eat lots of butter. Don't be afraid of butter. Don't feel guilty about eating butter. Put butter on everything. You will feel so much better. Just this one act will make you feel better. You will think more clearly. You'll be happier.
I agree 100%. And I'll just share a little story. When my fiance was a child, I think 4 years old, 5 years old, he had a period of like 2-3 months where he ate like a stick of butter a day. He would just like take it and eat it straight from the, like he couldn't get enough of it. And I'm very happy that his parents were like, okay, then just eat the butter.
Yeah. You must need it. Yes.
He must need it. So, and nowadays he's a fantastic, incredible man, and he's always also very tall and very strong. So he's like, I don't know, in feet he's almost 2 meters tall, which is 6'6".
Oh gosh, that's 6'6". That's
6'6".
very tall.
Yeah, very, very tall and muscular and incredibly beautiful human being. So butter is better.
And this is what we want. We want men who are masculine but confident, so they're gentle. Exactly. Okay, and then we want women who are feminine but who are confident so that they are forceful and accomplishing things.
Yeah, I love it. I love what the way you put it. Because it's always difficult how to explain. Yeah, that being a masculine man doesn't mean being an idiot.
Or in some way, and unfortunately,
violent, yeah.
there has been in this country for the last almost 20 years this movement, this propaganda among young women that men are bad. Everything is
Yes.
the fault of men,
Yes.
and so if the men are not allowed to be masculine anymore.
No. Because it's seen as a bad thing, so they have to hide this masculinity because it's bad for them. So then everything ties up together. Then give them the food that will make them Puritans, so it gives them a more calm attitude to life. No, it takes away their masculinity.
Yes,
as
absolutely.
well. And with women, they are doing exactly.
Men who are insecure about their masculinity, they're the men who tend to be violent.
Yes, exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If they're confident, they're always gentle.
You don't need to assert yourself when you're confident.
Exactly.
Because it just exudes from you. It's there. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And it's the same with women. And I just have to say at the end, I think this past International Women's Day, I saw a big difference with past maybe 2 years on how much negative content was being shared by women who were supposedly defending women or celebrating women, and it was all negative content, which I don't know what's going on with that.
Well, I think it's just like everything else that's gotten taken over.
Exactly.
So, with people with a negative agenda.
Yes, exactly. And you will know it yourself because the Weston A Foundation has got a lot of backfire in the past 3 years as well, right?
Not too bad.
For sharing, or for speaking openly, no?
Yes. Well, we just did a whole issue on gender confusion and the dietary factors that are causing this. Mm-hmm. Because this diet that's being promoted will indeed create gender confusion in our young people.
This is very interesting, Sally. I'm going to link this article or piece here with the notes of the podcast, because that will be a very interesting read for all of us.
We just posted it, and it was in the journal.
So it's recent. Okay, I'm gonna put it in the notes because that will be a very interesting read.
We called it "How to Ensure Optimal Hormonal Development in Your Child." So.
Okay. I love you always come up with all the topics that are relevant for every time. So
well, growing up is hard enough and confusing enough without also being confused about your gender. Yes. That makes it just doubly difficult.
But it's also if you're eating a diet that it's making you into a monk, and
yes, there you go, or a nun.
Yes. Or a nun, and also at the same time you are getting ideas. Like I remember growing up, like I told you, I was a handful growing up, so I was always doing all the crazy things that supposedly girls don't do, but nobody ever told me you're a boy, or right. I never thought I was a boy.
Well, boys are bad. Yes.
No, and I was doing all the boy things because I just thought it was fun. And it was a handful. I wasn't the little girl sitting, being nice. I was just running wild and being a bit crazy. So yes, thank you so much for writing about that as well.
You're welcome. Yeah.
I don't know if there is anything else you want to share with us.
No, I'm just thrilled the book is out in Spanish.
Yes.
We're trying to get it into the States, find a way of distributing in the States. And I am coming to Spain in the end of June. I'm sure you'll be giving people details about that.
Yes. And like we said at the beginning, so if you liked what we've been talking about here, then the book Nourishing Traditions in Spanish is your book, because it's not just a book about food or recipes. It's a book that, in a way, touches all these topics. So the more you read it, you're reading about all these topics that we were talking about here today. You're going to find them in this book, related also to food, which is amazing. So I'm going to put all the links that you can find the book It's easy to find now in Spain, and I imagine it's very easy to ship to Europe, especially to the European Union. And we're looking really forward to seeing you in Spain in June. I'm so happy that you're going to be coming, Sally. And hopefully we get to see each other in person, and with Hilda as well.
I hope so. All right. Well,
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, Sally. Chao.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Gracias por escuchar Viaje a la Nueva Historia, la reunión de la tribu, conmigo, Jimena de la Serna. Este podcast y el 99% de mi contenido te lo ofrezco completamente gratis, dependiendo solamente del apoyo de seguidores como tú. Si quieres apoyar este viaje a llegar lejos, te puedes suscribir a mi canal, a mi blog y podcast en jimenadelaserna.com. Recuerda que toda acción, por pequeña o anónima que parezca, tiene un efecto mariposa inimaginable. Si cada que recibes una pieza de contenido mía que te inspire o ayude, la compartes con una sola persona de tu círculo, estarás pavimentando el camino del viaje al nuevo mundo y la reunión de la tribu será imparable. Gracias por viajar juntos. Nos vemos en el siguiente episodio.